Hello YouTube, Chris the Frugal Audiophile here again with another review, and today we have the ZVOX AcuVoice AV100, hereafter referred to as the AV100 because that name's a mouthful. And before we get started, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, hit that bell if you'd like to receive notifications when I upload new videos. So let's talk about the AV100. Now this is a small, I guess you're going to call it a speaker bar. It reminds me of a Bluetooth speaker, but that's not exactly what it is because there's no Bluetooth in this and there is also no battery inside of it. So it's a speaker bar. It's meant to go under your TV. And this one actually is meant to help out those who struggle with hearing loss. And so that wasn't exactly why I bought it. I liked the size of it and what it claimed to do. So I thought I would check it out because I'm looking for a small speaker bar to take with me while I travel to use with my iPad. And that has been a more challenging task than you might think it would be. I've talked about the Emotiva 3B speakers before, as well as some Bluetooth speakers. And so I'm having a hard time finding something that works. So I thought I would try this one out. This is one of the more expensive options. It was $100. The Emotiva speakers were $100. Some of the Bluetooth speakers I tried were around $50 to $60. I do have one on the way, which you'll probably see an unboxing that as soon as it comes in, I'm hoping will work. But for now, let's talk more about the AV100 and let's get into some design and specs. To begin with, this bar is 10 inches wide by 2 3/4 inch deep by 2.5 inches high. So it's a pretty small little bar. And also it only weighs a pound, and I can attest, it is quite light. Here I have my JBL Flip 4, and it weighs probably 2 to 3 times as much as the AV100 here. Now, of course, that does have a battery inside of it, the JBL Flip 4, so that accounts for a lot of the weight. But this is a light speaker bar. Does heavier mean better quality components or better sound? No, not necessarily. It does not work that way. But just to let you know, it is fairly light and it's very compact. Also, it has a 32 watt Class D amplifier. I think that is total wattage, so 16 watts per driver, which it has 2 full range speaker drivers, no woofer or tweeter or mid-range separation to speak of. They're just full range drivers. It is stereo though, so that's nice to know. Now this has 6 levels of AcuVoice, and that is the technology built into the speaker that is intended to make dialogue clearer and more pronounced as you listen to it. So if you're someone who struggles to understand what people are saying on TV, it will help do that. It also has an auto volume leveling feature. I do believe that is always just enabled. I could not find a button for that. Also, it has phase Q surround sound that's supposed to make it sound a little bit bigger. I can attest that does work. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on with the review. Because it is such a small speaker bar, they kind of want to give you the illusion that it's bigger than it actually is, and it works to a certain extent. Also, this speaker bar has one input. It is a shared analog digital input. It's either a 3.5 millimeter analog jack or an optical audio jack. You accomplish that by using a 3.5 to optical audio cable. So that cable's got to have an itty bitty DAC somewhere inside of it that converts the digital signal coming out of most likely your TV to a 3.5 millimeter jack that attaches to the speaker on the back. So something else to keep in mind there. There's only one input. It should be fine. Just connecting it to a TV should work just fine. There is a remote that is included with this device. It's a nice remote, works well, it gets the job done. The AV100 cost $100. So what was the assignment for the AV100? Well, that is to be a portable soundbar solution for my iPad with decent sound. How did it do with that assignment? To begin, let's look at what it gets right. First, compact size. It is the right size for travel. This is about the size of soundbar, speaker bar solution I was looking for travel because it is very compact. I also like that it is a plug-and-play solution. There's no charging you have to deal with. You just plug it in and it works. Actually, you plug in the power and it automatically turns on, and then you can plug in your source and you are good to go. I like that about it. That would serve me well on the road. And it does have clear sound. I have no complaints about the clarity of the sound coming out of the AV100. The dialogue is very easy to understand, and the frequencies that it does reproduce are very clear, so it does get that right as well. Next, for what it gets right, is good soundstage. I was watching The Dark Knight on Netflix. I have it connected to my TCL 32-inch TV, just off to my left, your right over there, and it did present a nice large soundstage. It did give the illusion that sound was coming from outside of the soundbar, so it sounded bigger. I didn't just feel like I was listening to 10 inches of sound. The soundstage on it was quite good and actually better than what I was expecting when I was watching that movie. It was very enjoyable to watch as far as that is concerned. And finally, I really like the remote. It is high quality. It kind of has like a silicone rubber feel to it. The buttons have a nice click, and it works quite well. Probably my only small little complaint is that all the buttons are the same size. They're just in a straight row down the remote, and so that's something that you're going to have to get used to with time. Okay, so let's talk about what the AV100 gets wrong. The first thing I will cite is only one input. That's not a big deal if you just plug it into a TV and go, but if you want to use it maybe for multiple devices, such as a smartphone, to play music through it, you're going to either have to change out the input or figure out another solution. There's no Bluetooth input on this one, and so it really is a one-purpose device, and that is to plug into a TV in order to help clarify the sound. So I do not like that. Speaking of which, the AcuVoice, although it does make the voices more pronounced, as a lot of those types of technologies do, it messes with the frequency response in order to do that. So it's going to tip up the mid-range, and I don't know if it necessarily tips down the bass and the treble, but they certainly become less pronounced. It may just be the fact that you're pushing up the mid-range, but to my ears, as the AcuVoice level goes up, the voices do become louder and more predominant. They don't actually sound more natural. They sound less natural, and then the highs and the lows, they just almost completely disappear. Now you're just listening to a mid-range canon, and for me, that was not an enjoyable experience. It made movies and music sound very unnatural, so I just left that feature off because I could not stand to use it. And finally, for what it gets wrong, is no bass. I ran a frequency sweep with this speaker, and you get a little bit of usable bass around 80 hertz, but it really doesn't come on until about 100 hertz. And so that is going to make movies and even music much less impactful. So I got this to take with me while I'm traveling, like say at my parents' house, in order to play movies and be able to better hear them, but also I want to be able to enjoy them. I want to feel some impact with the movie that I'm watching. I am not expecting the world. I am not expecting this little bitty speaker bar to hit, 35, 40 hertz. I understand that, but my JBL Flip 4 gets lower and louder than the AV100. I have also used Bluetooth speakers that were only slightly bigger that got a lot lower than this device, so I know they could get more out of it. This is a sealed topology with two full-range drivers. There is no port, there's no passive radiator, none of that. It's just the two full-range drivers pushing out the front of the speaker bar, and therefore it's going to have hardly any bass to speak of, and that rang true. When I was listening to 10.8 by Deadmau5, it didn't even sound like the right song because all the bass in that song was just missing. It was just gone. All right, so it did not sound right at all, and I could tell that the bass was dropping off quite quickly at around 100 hertz. That's not a concern for someone. Maybe they would not care as much as I do, but myself, it's just not what I was looking for. I can't expect the world out of this little bitty speaker bar. However, I have to consider its assignment and what I'm looking for in this product, and that missing bass was a huge knock in my opinion. Another thing it gets wrong is that my iPad does not actually fit on top of it. For one thing, there's a little bit of a rake towards the back on it here, and it's just too narrow. Now, in the Amazon page for this device, it does show an iPad resting on top of it. I'm not exactly sure how they did that. Probably with a different case, it might work, but I don't know. It's slanted towards the back, so I think that no matter what you do, an iPad's just going to fall off it. So it doesn't work for that, therefore, it really does not work for me in my use case. Which brings me to the Frugality grade. And for a grade, I am going to give the ZVOX AcuVoice AV100 a C-. Yep, for my assignment, it gets a C-. There are many reasons for that. Largely, it's due to the AcuVoice issues as well as lacking bass. The one input I can kind of overlook, as it is a small device with one intended purpose for the device, and I do recognize that I am not the intended audience for the AV100, okay? So if you're looking for a review by someone who is using this device for its intended purpose, you're gonna have to look elsewhere, because that was not my reason for getting it, nor is it my review. That type of review would probably be a lot more positive, because it does sound good for what it does. It just doesn't fit my needs and my requirements for a portable soundbar for my iPad. And that brings me to my recommendations for the soundbar. And the first one is, if you don't really care about bass, give it a shot. It may work just fine for you. If you are looking for something just to make dialogue easy to understand, and it actually does that without even enabling the AcuVoice. I know I was hard on AcuVoice, but it does that without even having to enable AcuVoice. It is so much better than TV speakers. It has about the same amount of bass as a pair of tinny TV speakers, but it has much clearer dialogue than any TV I have ever heard. I'm sure there are better ones that I have, but as far as I'm concerned, it does help in that area. However, if you want a small portable solution with decent bass, maybe something that starts to come alive around 60 hertz, you're gonna have to look elsewhere. And I am still working on that recommendation. Stay tuned for that. And finally, if you are someone or you have a family member who fits the intended buyer for this product, someone who is struggling with hearing loss, I think it's a viable solution. ZVOX has a whole line of these AcuVoice speakers. I probably recommend going with something a little bit bigger, unless you're talking about putting it in a small room and they have $100 to spend, you know, give it a shot. But I'd probably move up the line to a higher model if you want to put it in a living room or a larger room situation where someone needs to better understand the dialogue. It will work just fine for that, okay? So if that's all you're intending to do with it, you know, go ahead and give it a shot. So do you own the ZVOX AV100? What do you think of it? Do you agree or disagree with my review here? If you like this kind of content, be sure to check out my Patreon and buy me a cup of coffee. And remember, frugal doesn't necessarily mean cheap.